Psalm 65, overflowing mercy erases every curse. Trying to follow your name, there are moments in life when it feels as if unseen forces are working against us, when doors that should open stay closed, when relationships that seem blessed suddenly fracture, and when effort turns into frustration. Many people call these patterns bad luck, misfortune, or karma. Yet Scripture teaches that behind these invisible struggles, there may be deeper spiritual realities at play, forces of darkness that seek to curse, delay, and distort the destiny of those chosen by God. Psalm 65 stands as a radiant declaration that divine mercy is not just a gentle comfort. It is a cleansing, overwhelming force capable of erasing every curse, breaking every chain, and silencing every accusation that dares to follow the name of a child of God. David, the author of this psalm, knew what it meant to live under both favor and persecution. He was anointed, but hunted, blessed, yet betrayed. Through his words, we see that mercy is not weakness, it is power. Mercy flows from God like an unstoppable river that carries away the debris of sin, guilt, shame, and every spoken word of malice that tries to attach itself to your life. When Psalm 65 declares, "You forgive our transgressions," it also whispers an eternal truth, that every curse loses its voice in the presence of God's overflowing grace. This psalm invites us to step into a spiritual reality where mercy is not a drop, it is a flood. It reminds us that when God chooses to bless, no power in heaven or hell can revoke that decree. Every attempt by darkness to stain your name is drowned in the river of divine compassion. In the chapters that follow, we will journey deeply through 5 revelations found in Psalm 65, 5 divine movements of mercy that not only cleanse, but also reposition the believer under heaven's unbreakable covenant. We will see how mercy destroys spiritual accusations, how it restores identity, how it breaks ancestral burdens, how it reclaims stolen ground, and how it multiplies blessing in every dry area of life. Let this message awaken your faith. Let it renew your confidence that nothing, no curse, no word, no past mistake can follow you when the mercy of God moves before you. The river of mercy that washes away every trace of judgment. Mercy is not merely a divine feeling, it is a divine movement. Psalm 65:9 says, "You visit the earth and water it, you greatly enrich it." This is not just a description of natural rain, it is a prophetic image of spiritual mercy. When heaven visits a life, it does not come in silence. It comes like rain that penetrates the hardest ground, turning barren fields into gardens. To understand mercy's power, we must first recognize the reality of judgment. Humanity stands naturally under the weight of consequences. What we sow, we reap. Every thought, word, and action produces fruit. Without mercy, justice alone would demand full repayment for every error. But mercy interrupts that equation. It does not deny justice. It satisfies it by covering what cannot be fixed by human hands. When mercy flows, it does not negotiate with curses, it erases them. Every curse that tries to follow your name is rooted in accusation. In the spiritual realm, the enemy is called the accuser of the brethren. He operates by reminding heaven of your failures, your bloodline's history, and your weaknesses. But when God's mercy speaks, accusation loses legal ground. The blood of Jesus silences the courtroom of hell. The cross stands as the final verdict that declares not guilty. Imagine mercy as a mighty river descending from heaven, carrying with it the purity of God's own character. It flows into the lowest valleys of your life, your regrets, your hidden wounds, your family's generational struggles, and it begins to wash them clean. It doesn't ask the past for permission. It doesn't need your perfection as a precondition. It simply flows. Many believers struggle because they try to fight spiritual heaviness with effort instead of surrender. They try to counter curses with constant anxiety, thinking that vigilance equals victory. But mercy teaches a higher truth. You cannot outfight what only God can overwrite. The moment you yield to divine mercy, heaven begins to move where your strength has failed. The flow of mercy is relentless. It does not stop where guilt begins. It keeps running until it finds the very place where you were condemned and plants new life there. That is why the psalmist says, "You crown the year with your goodness, and your paths drip with abundance." The abundance is not earned, it is overflow from mercy's river. Every curse operates through continuity. It tries to follow, to repeat, to echo through generations. But mercy breaks continuity. When God steps in, the story changes. A family once bound by cycles of loss becomes a lineage of restoration. A person once defined by failure becomes a testimony of transformation. If there are things in your life that seem to follow you, patterns that resist progress, know that mercy can end them today, not by your effort, but by divine decree. You are not your past. You are not your mistakes. You are not the words spoken against you. You are the product of a river that never runs dry. God's mercy is not a reaction. It is a plan. Long before any curse tried to attach itself to your life, mercy was already written into your destiny. That is why David could say, "Praise awaits you, O God, in Zion. To you, vows will be performed." Praise was his response to the realization that mercy had already gone ahead of him. When mercy visits, curses evacuate. When mercy flows, bitterness dissolves. When mercy reigns, accusation dies. It is not the noise of warfare that wins the battle. It is the quiet force of divine compassion that rewrites history. Pause here and let this truth settle deeply in your spirit. Mercy is greater than memory. It can reach back into what was spoken over your childhood, over your family name, over your health, and it can wash it all away. Every curse that tries to follow your name loses its path in the flood of God's mercy. Mercy not only cleanses, it transforms. The person who once lived under guilt now walks in gratitude. The one who feared judgment now becomes a channel of grace. That is the mystery of divine mercy. It changes not only your story but also your identity. When you understand that mercy is the loudest sound in heaven, fear loses its authority. You realize that no curse can outlast the compassion of God. He does not bless you because you are flawless. He blesses you because his nature is faithful. And so, as you stand before him today, let your heart rest. The river of mercy is flowing even now. Through every memory, every scar, every word that tried to follow you, it is carrying away what no human could carry for you. You are free because mercy flows. You are clean because mercy speaks. You are chosen because mercy saw you before sin marked you. And every curse, spoken or silent, has been erased in the flood of divine compassion. Let this truth become your foundation. Walk in it, declare it. Let your soul rise with gratitude that mercy, not judgment, has the final word over your life. If this message has spoken to your heart, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Join this journey of faith where we explore how God's mercy, love, and truth still change lives today. How mercy breaks the voice of accusation and restores your name before heaven and earth. There is a mysterious power in words, both in the words we speak and in those spoken against us. The spiritual realm is not silent. It operates through sound, decrees, and declarations. Every blessing spoken has creative energy, and every curse spoken carries destructive intent. Psalm 65 reveals a sacred secret. Mercy is the divine force that interrupts destructive speech and replaces it with heavenly testimony. It does not simply silence the accuser, it changes the narrative. The psalmist declares, "Blessed is the one you choose and bring near, to dwell in your courts." This is not poetic language, it is a spiritual reality. To be chosen is to be defended. To be brought near is to be vindicated. When mercy calls your name, no accusation can follow you into God's presence. The voice of accusation has always been the weapon of the enemy. From the Garden of Eden to the visions of Revelation, the adversary has used guilt as his main instrument. His strategy is simple: to convince God's people that they are unworthy of God's presence, unfit for his favor, and unforgivable in their past. Accusation operates like a shadow. It follows light, always trying to obscure it. But mercy is the dawn that ends the night of condemnation. When mercy speaks, shadows flee. Accusation is not merely emotional, it is legal. The enemy accuses before God's throne, attempting to use the law of righteousness against the very people whom grace has redeemed. He points to failures, patterns, and moments of weakness to claim that you are disqualified from divine purpose. Yet in that heavenly courtroom, something greater than accusation is present: the blood of Christ. Mercy speaks through that blood. It testifies not of your perfection, but of your pardon. It is not your defense that wins the case. It is your advocate, Jesus Christ, who stands as your eternal intercessor. When you are accused, both externally and internally, it is not your job to argue with darkness. You do not need to defend yourself against lies when the truth already stands as your shield. Mercy cancels the enemy's evidence by rewriting the record. Every sin once recorded against your name is blotted out by divine compassion. In heaven's books, your name is no longer associated with guilt, it is written beside grace. You are no longer the person who failed, you are the person whom mercy found. The human tendency, however, is to respond to accusation with self-justification. We explain, rationalize, and try to convince others that our hearts are pure. But mercy teaches that vindication is not something you earn. It is something God performs. When mercy steps into your situation, it does not ask for the crowd's approval. It announces your freedom directly before heaven. And what heaven declares cannot be reversed by human opinion. Psalm 65 continues with the image of divine visitation. When iniquities prevail against us, you atone for our transgressions. Notice that mercy is proactive. It does not wait until your enemies apologize or until you fix every flaw. It moves at the very moment when sin and accusation seem strongest. When the enemy increases his voice, mercy increases its volume. When the accuser says, "You are unworthy," mercy replies, "You are chosen." And there is a sacred exchange that takes place in this psalm. The sinner, heavy with guilt, comes to the altar of God expecting judgment, but instead finds cleansing. The same voice that once condemned him now hears a new declaration. "You are blessed, for I have chosen you to dwell near me." This is the restoration of identity. The enemy calls you by your past. God calls you by your purpose. Mercy is the bridge between who you were and who you were destined to be. If you could see what happens in the spiritual dimension when mercy speaks, you would never again live in fear of curses or accusations. In the invisible courts of heaven, mercy operates as divine advocacy. The accuser presents his case, listing your failures and every ancestral claim tied to your name. He recites every curse spoken by those who resented you, every dark word whispered in envy, every wound you inflicted or received. But before his words can land, the blood speaks louder. The voice of mercy interrupts him. The courtroom falls silent, and the judge, the same God who created you, rises to declare case dismissed. This is not an abstract theology. It is a living reality for every believer who has been redeemed. There is a moment when God himself intervenes in your narrative and changes your standing. What once looked like a life defined by struggle becomes a testimony of grace. What was shame becomes strength. What was accusation becomes an anthem of gratitude. Many live unaware of this spiritual truth. They still feel condemned, even after receiving forgiveness. They carry the echo of old words, family curses, betrayals, false accusations, self-criticism, and those echoes shape their emotions, relationships, and decisions. But mercy is not a distant concept. It is an active power that rewrites your emotional and spiritual DNA. It reaches the places where accusation has built walls and tears them down. It touches the memories that still bleed and transforms them into marks of healing. Every time the enemy speaks your name with contempt, mercy speaks your name with compassion. The enemy remembers your fall. God remembers your redemption. The enemy points to your wounds. God points to his son's scars. And between those two voices, the one that prevails is mercy. Because while accusation depends on your past, mercy depends on his promise. God's mercy does not deny justice. It satisfies it. At the cross, all accusations were answered once and for all. Every curse, every spoken word, every generational stain met the full force of divine love. The cross is not just a symbol of suffering, it is the courtroom where mercy triumphed over judgment. When Jesus declared, "It is finished," he was not speaking metaphorically. He was closing every spiritual case against you. That means your name, your reputation, your destiny, your lineage no longer belongs to the darkness that accused it. It belongs to the light that redeemed it. Mercy restores not only your spiritual record, but also your earthly identity. It changes how heaven sees you, and eventually it changes how people see you. Those who once doubted you begin to perceive something divine surrounding you, a peace that cannot be explained, a strength that does not come from you. That is the mark of mercy. When God restores a name, he does not merely repair it, he glorifies it. He did not just forgive David, he made him a king and called him a man after my own heart. He did not just cleanse Mary Magdalene, he made her the first witness of resurrection. He did not just redeem Paul, he turned him from persecutor to apostle. The story of Scripture is the story of mercy taking broken names and turning them into eternal monuments of grace. In the same way, your name is not defined by what has been said about you. It is defined by what God says through you. Every whisper of accusation loses authority the moment mercy takes the throne of your heart. This is why David could write with confidence, "By awesome deeds you will answer us in righteousness, O God of our salvation." God answers not with explanations, but with actions. His mercy manifests as deliverance. Think about the seasons of your life when you felt most misunderstood or falsely accused. Perhaps people spoke things about you that were not true, or perhaps you made mistakes that others refused to let go. In those moments, the voice of shame often becomes louder than the voice of grace. But Psalm 65 offers a different ending. God himself steps in to speak over your life. He says, "I will not let accusation define the one I have chosen." Mercy, then, becomes your protection in unseen battles. It builds a wall around your heart that no curse can cross. It stands between you and every word that seeks to destroy your peace. When you learn to live under the awareness of mercy, you stop fearing the opinions of others. You understand that God's verdict is final. You no longer chase validation. You rest in divine affirmation. Mercy also redefines the way you view others. Once you have been forgiven deeply, you begin to forgive freely. The one who knows what it feels like to be vindicated by grace no longer participates in accusation. Mercy multiplies itself through those who have received it. When you stop accusing others, you step into deeper alignment with heaven. You become a vessel of reconciliation instead of division. Psalm 65 describes a world in which mercy not only redeems, but also renews creation. You visit the earth and water it. You greatly enrich it. The river of God is full of water. The same God who silences accusation in the heavens also silences barrenness on earth. The moment you are cleansed from the inside, the outer world begins to respond. Fields that were dry begin to bear fruit. Opportunities that were locked begin to open. This is not coincidence. It is the visible effect of invisible grace. Mercy always produces multiplication. Where guilt once restricted growth, grace releases abundance. When the accuser's voice is silenced, the believer can finally hear God's creative whisper again, the same voice that said, "Let there be light." Mercy allows that light to shine once more through you. Every curse is a counterfeit prophecy. It tries to project failure into your future, but mercy replaces it with divine truth. It speaks over you words of destiny, hope, and promise. It declares that your end will not resemble your beginning. It proclaims that the voice that once accused you will be forced to witness your restoration. Imagine God standing before every power that tried to defile your name and declaring, "This one is mine." Imagine the silence that follows when heaven's decree overrules every word of darkness. That is what mercy does. It restores ownership. It reminds the enemy that you belong to God, body, soul, and spirit. You are sealed, protected, and reclaimed. There are seasons when God allows accusation to surface, not to shame you, but to display the magnitude of his mercy. He lets the enemy speak so that when he silences him, the victory becomes undeniable. He lets people misunderstand you so that when he vindicates you, no one will doubt that it was his hand, not your effort, that lifted you. Mercy's vindication is not always instant, but it is always perfect. It may take time for others to see what heaven already knows. Yet as you walk in faith, you will notice the shift. The same situations that once caused pain begin to reveal purpose. The same people who once cursed you begin to see grace in your life. That is the beauty of divine reversal. Mercy turns ashes into crowns. To dwell in mercy is to live under a new atmosphere. It means you no longer walk as a fugitive of guilt, but as a citizen of grace. Your past is no longer your prison, it is your testimony. The accuser no longer holds the pen, God does. He is rewriting your name in his story of redemption. Every time you choose to believe mercy instead of accusation, you honor the cross. You align yourself with truth rather than lies. You give glory to the one who traded his innocence for your freedom. And as you do, something powerful happens. The curse loses its voice, the burden lifts, and peace fills the space once occupied by fear. Let the words of Psalm 65 echo in your heart. Blessed is the one you choose and bring near. You have been chosen, you have been brought near, and no voice, human or demonic, can reverse that choice. The mercy that erased your sin also erased your shame. The blood that covered your failure also covered your future. You are not followed by curses. You are followed by goodness and mercy all the days of your life. So stand in confidence today. Let mercy be your defense, your restoration, and your identity. Walk as one who knows that the accuser has been silenced forever. And as you move forward, carry this truth within you. Mercy does not only cleanse your record, it crowns your life. If these words have strengthened your faith, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Stay connected as we continue uncovering the deep mysteries of God's mercy, power, and presence in your daily walk of faith. The mercy that rewrites generational patterns and breaks ancestral curses. There is a profound mystery hidden within the lineage of every human being, a thread of inheritance that carries not only physical characteristics, but also spiritual imprints. Families are not just connected by blood, they are connected by memory, by cycles, by the invisible weight of words spoken and choices made through generations. In the unseen realm, these patterns can become either channels of blessing or conduits of bondage. Psalm 65 reveals that God's mercy is powerful enough to reach backward into time, into those inherited chains, and shatter the curses that have tried to follow your name. His mercy does not stop at the surface of your life. It flows through your entire bloodline. When David said, "You forgive our transgressions," he was not only speaking for himself, He was speaking on behalf of his people, his nation, his lineage. He understood that sin and mercy both move generationally. What one generation tolerates, the next inherits. But what one generation repents for, the next receives freedom from. The mercy of God is not limited by chronology. It rewrites history. It reaches into the past to remove what was spoken, done, or allowed that did not align with his covenant. Every curse begins as a word. Every word is a seed, and every seed produces after its kind unless mercy intervenes. When an ancestor opens a door to darkness through idolatry, betrayal, bloodshed, or bitterness, that doorway becomes a point of access through which spiritual forces can influence the descendants. The enemy uses these legal grounds to repeat cycles: poverty that returns, sickness that runs through generations, relationships that always break at the same point, dreams that die before maturity. These are not coincidences. They are unfinished spiritual transactions waiting for mercy to intervene. Psalm 65 speaks of God visiting the earth and watering it, causing abundance to spring forth. This is not only a description of physical fertility, but also a metaphor of generational renewal. When mercy rains upon a lineage, the dry soil of old curses becomes the fertile ground of new beginnings. What was once a desert of failure becomes a garden of restoration. Mercy operates differently from judgment. Judgment travels in one direction. It punishes the guilty. But mercy moves in all directions. It looks back to cleanse the past. It stands in the present to sustain the believer, and it looks forward to secure the future. When you receive mercy, you are not just forgiven. You are repositioned. You become the first in your family to walk in freedom. There are moments when you feel as though you are fighting battles that are not entirely your own, as if invisible forces are resisting your progress for no apparent reason. That is the echo of generational bondage. Yet the moment mercy visits your life, the echo fades. God does not merely silence the noise. He changes the frequency. The spiritual DNA that once carried patterns of defeat becomes saturated with His grace. You must understand that mercy is not passive. It is warfare. When you cry out for mercy, you are engaging in the highest form of spiritual combat. You are inviting the very nature of God to enter your bloodline and undo what hell has established. It is not emotion, it is authority. When the psalmist declares, "By awesome deeds you will answer us in righteousness," he reveals that mercy is not soft, it is mighty. It is the hammer that breaks ancestral curses, the water that cleanses family altars, the voice that drowns out every generational accusation. There are families where bitterness has been inherited like an heirloom, where words of hatred have passed from one mouth to another, shaping destinies before they even begin. But mercy speaks a better word. When mercy visits, the family's story changes. What was once a lineage of anger becomes a line of intercessors. What was once marked by fear becomes known for faith. God takes the same bloodline that was once under attack and turns it into a weapon of restoration. Sometimes, the person who begins to seek God deeply is chosen precisely because mercy intends to break the pattern through them. You are not fighting only for yourself. You are fighting for every name connected to yours. The prayers you pray today echo forward into generations you will never meet. The moment you surrender to mercy, you become a bridge between what was cursed and what will be blessed. Psalm 65 continues, "You crown the year with your goodness, and your paths drip with abundance." This verse is a prophetic picture of generational reversal. Where there was barrenness, God releases fruitfulness. Where there was shame, He releases honor. Mercy does not just end the curse, it establishes blessing so strong that future generations will not even remember the chains that once existed. But how does mercy accomplish this? It begins with revelation. You cannot break what you do not recognize. The Spirit of God exposes patterns not to shame you, but to free you. When you begin to notice cycles repeating, fear, sickness, poverty, relational betrayal. Do not despair. Recognize that what has been revealed can now be healed. Revelation is the doorway to redemption. The enemy's power lies in secrecy, but mercy's power lies in exposure. Once a curse is exposed to the light of truth, it loses its legal right to remain. Mercy then brings repentance, not as punishment, but as purification. Repentance is the act of agreeing with God's truth over your family's past. It is saying, Lord, whatever was done in ignorance or rebellion in my lineage, let your mercy cover it. And heaven responds immediately because mercy is always ready. The blood of Christ transcends time. It reaches back to every ancestor who opened a door to darkness and closes it forever. You may not know every sin in your bloodline, but mercy does. You may not understand every spiritual contract written over your family, but mercy has already broken its seal. You may not remember every word spoken against your name, but mercy remembers every tear you have cried in prayer. God's compassion is more powerful than human memory. It goes where you cannot go, heals what you cannot touch, and restores what you thought was lost forever. When mercy rewrites a bloodline, it does not erase the story, it redeems it. The pain becomes purpose, the suffering becomes testimony. The same family that once suffered under curses becomes the evidence of divine faithfulness. You may be the first in your family to stand in this revelation, but you will not be the last. Your obedience becomes the open door for future generations to walk in freedom. Think of Joseph in Egypt. He came from a family torn by jealousy and betrayal. His brothers cursed him with their words, sold him into slavery, and abandoned him. Yet mercy found him in the pit, followed him into the prison, and crowned him in the palace. Joseph did not just survive the curse, he reversed it. When his brothers came to Egypt in famine, the one they cursed became the one who fed them. That is how mercy works. It turns victims into vessels of restoration. Mercy has a memory of its own. It remembers every cry for help, every act of forgiveness, every seed of faith sown in secret. And in due season, it manifests visible change. The same land that once produced thorns begins to yield wheat. The same house that once echoed with sorrow becomes a place of laughter. The same name that once carried shame becomes known for glory. When Psalm 65 says, "You soften it with showers," it captures this transformation beautifully. The soil represents the human heart, hardened by generations of pain, dry from years without hope. But when mercy reigns, the heart softens. What could not grow before begins to flourish. This is why you must never underestimate the power of intercession. Every time you cry out to God for your family, mercy reigns again. Every tear you shed becomes a drop of water that will one day form a river of blessing. You may not see the full harvest in your lifetime, but heaven keeps record. Mercy is patient. It works through decades, even centuries. What begins with one prayer today can become the foundation for 1,000 miracles tomorrow. Abraham's faith produced Isaac, Isaac's blessing produced Jacob, and Jacob's line produced Christ himself. One act of obedience released mercy that changed the entire world. Curses are temporary because they rely on sin for fuel, but mercy is eternal because it flows from God's heart. When mercy touches your bloodline, it exhausts the power of darkness. It drains the enemy of his authority. He cannot curse what God has already blessed. The enemy's only strategy then is deception, to convince you that you are still bound even after the chains have been broken. That is why your awareness of mercy must become stronger than your memory of pain. Mercy will often test your faith before it reveals its fullness. God may lead you into situations that mirror your ancestors' struggles, not to punish you, but to prove that the curse is truly broken. Where they failed, you will stand. Where they surrendered, you will overcome. Each victory becomes a prophetic announcement to the unseen world that the old order has ended. The family story has a new author now, and his name is Mercy. This is why it is vital to remain grateful. Gratitude anchors you in the reality of mercy. It reminds you that everything good in your life is not coincidence. It is covenant. When you give thanks, you align your heart with heaven's narrative instead of hell's accusation. Gratitude keeps your spiritual soil soft so that mercy can continue to reign. Generational mercy also calls you to release forgiveness. Sometimes the curses of the past persist because of the bitterness that remains unhealed. When you forgive those who hurt you, even those long gone, you break the agreement with darkness. Forgiveness is not denial, it is deliverance. It releases you from the emotional gravity of the past and allows mercy to flow freely through your lineage. And then something extraordinary happens. The same mercy that freed you begins to pursue others connected to your name. Family members who once resisted God begin to feel drawn to His presence. Hearts that were once closed begin to soften. You start to see signs, reconciliations, healings, restorations. Mercy moves like wind. It touches everything in its path. Psalm 65 ends with the image of overflowing abundance. The pastures of the wilderness overflow. The hills gird themselves with joy. That is not poetic exaggeration. It is prophecy. The wilderness is your family's history. The hills represent the future generations. When mercy flows, even the barren places overflow with life. The joy that once seemed impossible becomes the atmosphere of your lineage. If your family has been marked by pain, addiction, loss, or brokenness, know this: mercy has come to rewrite the story. You are not the continuation of the curse. You are the interruption. You are the proof that mercy wins. What once followed your name will now flee from it. Every accusation written against your family line has been nailed to the cross. Every dark claim has been nullified by the blood of Jesus. You are standing in the middle of a divine exchange. The curses that once pursued you are now replaced by blessings that will overtake you. The spiritual inheritance of sorrow has been traded for an inheritance of peace. The river of mercy will continue to flow through your family long after you are gone, watering the roots of generations yet unborn. Do not fear the past anymore. It has already been rewritten by grace. Do not fear the future either. Mercy has already gone ahead to prepare it. You are free, not because you escaped, but because God intervened. The mercy that began with you will not end with you. It will become a legacy of liberation. Stand in this truth. The name that once carried weight now carries glory. The voice that once accused now remains silent. The bloodline that once suffered is now a testimony of transformation. Mercy has done what no effort could ever achieve. It has erased every curse trying to follow your name and replaced it with blessing, peace, and divine favor. If this message has touched your heart and helped you understand the depth of God's mercy, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Stay with us as we continue unveiling how divine mercy transforms generations, restores purpose, and reveals God's eternal covenant of grace. The mercy that reclaims what was stolen and restores divine inheritance. There are moments in every believer's journey when the heart aches for what has been lost. Time, peace, opportunities, relationships, health, dreams that once seemed so alive but faded under the weight of adversity. These losses are not always natural. Many of them have spiritual roots. The enemy has been a thief from the beginning, seeking to steal what God planted in the soul, to rob families of their joy, to drain believers of their strength, and to distort destinies that were meant to shine. Psalm 65 reminds us that the mercy of God is not only a healing force, but also a restorative one. Divine mercy does not simply comfort after loss. It goes back into the ruins and rebuilds what was destroyed. It reclaims what the enemy stole and restores to the believer a double portion of blessing. When the psalmist proclaims, You crown the year with your goodness, and your paths drip with abundance. He is declaring a divine reversal. It is not just poetic imagery. It is a declaration of recovery. Every path where the enemy once walked, spreading lack and decay, is now soaked in the abundance of mercy. Every dry field that once symbolized disappointment is now drenched with divine renewal. God's mercy does not leave ruins untouched, it transforms them into testimonies. To understand how mercy reclaims what was stolen, we must first recognize that loss in the spiritual realm is rarely random. The adversary steals strategically. He attacks the areas of your life that carry divine purpose because he knows that what is anointed will multiply if left untouched. The enemy cannot destroy what God has blessed, but he can attempt to delay, distract, and discourage you from believing that restoration is possible. That is why mercy is not passive. It is God's direct response to injustice. Mercy says, "Enough." It steps into the story and turns every theft into an opportunity for glory. The nature of divine mercy is creative. It does not simply return what was taken. It recreates it in a form more glorious than before. When Job lost everything, it was mercy that spoke in the storm. God's mercy restored not only his wealth, but also his peace, his dignity, and his influence. The scripture says that the Lord blessed the latter days of Job more than his beginning. That is the mathematics of mercy. It multiplies beyond measure. The enemy takes one thing, but God restores sevenfold. You may look back on your life and see the trail of what was taken. Years spent in confusion, relationships that ended in betrayal, dreams that were buried under fear. But the same mercy that forgave your past now has the authority to restore what was lost in it. Mercy does not merely look forward, it reaches backward. It goes into the lost years, into the silent seasons where your heart grew weary, and it begins to rewrite the outcome. It retrieves the harvests that were stolen and brings them back into the present. Mercy reclaims, not through force, but through favor. Where justice demands punishment, mercy demands restoration. The Lord is both judge and redeemer. He does not simply settle the case, he compensates for the damage. When you live under divine mercy, you do not need to chase what was lost. The blessing begins to chase you. The psalm says, "The pastures of the wilderness overflow." What once looked barren begins to overflow without your striving because mercy has begun its work. There is a pattern in Scripture that reveals this truth. Every time the enemy steals, God's response is to bless even more abundantly. When Israel was enslaved in Egypt, Pharaoh thought he had broken their spirit. But mercy raised Moses, and the same nation that once built Pharaoh's cities left Egypt carrying the riches of their oppressors. That was not coincidence, it was restitution. Mercy made sure that every hand that had labored in chains left with gold. The enemy steals peace through fear, but mercy restores it through faith. He steals hope through despair, but mercy revives it through promise. He steals identity through shame, but mercy redefines it through revelation. Every loss has a corresponding mercy waiting to restore it. That is why David could say, "Blessed is the one you choose and bring near to dwell in your courts." To dwell in his presence is to dwell in restoration. Mercy begins the process of reclamation by changing your perception. Before God restores what was stolen externally, he first restores your faith internally. You cannot receive what you no longer believe belongs to you. That is why mercy whispers, "Lift your eyes again." It teaches you to hope where you once gave up, to pray where you once grew silent, to sow where you once despaired. The first miracle of restoration happens in the heart. The Spirit of mercy does not deny your losses, it sanctifies them. It takes your story of pain and turns it into an altar of praise. Every tear becomes a seed, every wound a doorway, every disappointment a divine classroom. The very area that once caused your greatest grief becomes the place where mercy displays its greatest strength. God is not only the redeemer of souls, but also the restorer of seasons. He redeems time itself. When the psalm declares, "You water its ridges abundantly, you settle its furrows, you make it soft with showers," it speaks of how mercy tends the neglected fields of life. The ridges symbolize the deep scars left by loss, the trenches of grief, the furrows of regret. But mercy waters them until they soften again, until life begins to grow where only pain remained. That is how divine reclamation works. Mercy turns trauma into testimony. You must understand that the devil cannot permanently steal what belongs to God. He can only hold it temporarily through deception, but when you awaken to the truth of mercy, the deception breaks. The moment you align your heart with God's promise, what was held captive begins to return. Sometimes restoration comes through unexpected doors, new relationships, fresh opportunities, insights, or supernatural favor. What you thought was gone forever comes back in a form you could not have imagined. God's mercy does not restore you to where you were. It takes you beyond. This is the difference between human compensation and divine restoration. When humans repay, they give back what was taken. When God restores, He adds abundance to what was lost. His mercy has creative power. It builds new things out of what was broken. There are areas in your life right now where mercy is already at work, even if you cannot see it. The soil of your spirit has been receiving unseen rain. The drought you felt was not abandonment, it was preparation. God allows the ground to rest before planting a greater harvest. Every season of loss carries a hidden seed of increase, and mercy knows exactly when to reveal it. Some losses were never meant to be restored in the form you expect, because mercy is not interested in returning you to old patterns. It restores the essence, not always the shape. A relationship may not return, but peace will. A career may change, but purpose will be renewed. A season may end, but destiny will rise. Mercy knows how to give you what you truly need, not merely what you miss. The enemy steals through confusion, but mercy restores through clarity. When the fog of pain lifts, you begin to see that nothing was wasted. Every loss becomes revelation. Every delay becomes alignment. Every closed door becomes protection. That is the language of mercy. It interprets pain as purpose. To walk in restoration, you must partner with mercy. You must refuse to define yourself by what was stolen and begin to declare what is being restored. Speak life over what seems lost. Declare that the river of mercy is reclaiming every promise attached to your name. The power of restoration is activated by agreement. Heaven has already released it, but faith gives it form. In the natural realm, restoration often begins when something broken is discovered and repaired. In the spiritual realm, restoration begins when something forgotten is remembered by God. Mercy is divine remembrance. When God remembers, it does not mean He had forgotten. It means He decides to act. When He remembered Noah, the flood began to recede. When He remembered Hannah, the womb opened. When He remembered Joseph, the prison doors broke. When He remembers you, everything that has been withheld begins to move toward fulfillment. The Lord's mercy also restores through multiplication. When He restores one thing, He connects it to many others. The healing of one wound can heal an entire dimension of your life. A single act of forgiveness can unlock decades of peace. That is the exponential nature of mercy. It does not restore one-to-one, it restores one-to-many. Every curse that once brought loss into your life has now been confronted by the abundance of God's mercy. The curse spoke death, but mercy speaks life. The curse took, but mercy gives. The curse limited, but mercy multiplies. The blood of Jesus stands as the eternal proof that restoration is not just possible, it is guaranteed. Restoration also changes how you see yourself. The one who has been restored no longer walks as a victim, but as a witness. You become living proof that mercy triumphs over judgment. You begin to speak differently, pray differently, love differently. The bitterness of loss gives way to the sweetness of gratitude. You no longer measure your worth by what you lost, but by what mercy rebuilt. When David wrote Psalm 65, he had lived through both betrayal and blessing, exile and exaltation. He knew what it meant to lose everything, home, peace, and reputation, and yet be restored beyond imagination. His life became a testimony that no curse can follow where mercy leads. When God restores, even your enemies will have to watch. The same people who saw your pain will see your praise. That is divine justice. The thief must witness your recovery. The mercy of God not only restores what was stolen, but also secures it. Once restoration comes, mercy surrounds it with protection. The psalm declares, "The little hills rejoice on every side." The hills symbolize covering, divine protection over the new harvest. When God restores, He does not leave your blessing vulnerable. He surrounds it with His presence so that the thief cannot enter again. Every area of your life where mercy has worked becomes a fortress of testimony. The enemy cannot re-enter what mercy has sealed. This is why gratitude is essential. It maintains the seal. When you thank God for what He has restored, you fortify it. Thanksgiving is spiritual armor against future theft. Do not measure your future by your losses. Measure it by His mercy. What has been stolen will not define you. What is being restored will. You are not the person who lost. You are the one whom mercy found. You are not the victim of the thief. You are the heir of restoration. Every scar is now a sign that grace has triumphed. If you look closely at your life, you will see traces of mercy everywhere. In the breath you still have, in the strength that carried you, in the hope that refused to die. Each trace is evidence that God has been reclaiming your story piece by piece. And soon you will see the full picture. A life rebuilt not by your own effort, but by His overflowing mercy. So lift your eyes again. Do not grieve what was stolen. The same God who visited David, who restored Job, who redeemed Joseph, and who resurrected Christ, is visiting your life now through mercy. Every loss has met its limit. Every curse has reached its expiration date. The tide has turned. The river of mercy is rising, reclaiming, renewing, and restoring all that was ever meant to be yours. You will not leave this life empty-handed. You will leave it carrying the proof that God is faithful. Mercy will not only restore your inheritance, it will enlarge it. You will bless others with what once broke you. You will carry restoration as a mantle and speak hope to those who are still in their season of loss. That is the final work of mercy. It transforms the restored into restorers. If this message has strengthened your spirit and helped you see the power of divine restoration, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Continue walking with us as we explore the limitless depth of God's mercy, the victories it brings, and the transformation it ignites in every life it touches. The eternal overflow of mercy, from cleansing to calling. There is a sacred mystery at the heart of Psalm 65 that transcends time and circumstance. The mercy of God does not end with forgiveness, restoration, or even generational renewal. It overflows into divine calling. Mercy is not a single act of pardon. It is the atmosphere in which destiny matures. What begins as cleansing becomes commissioning. When the psalmist says, "Blessed is the one you choose and bring near to dwell in your courts," he is revealing a truth that the redeemed are not merely forgiven, they are chosen for purpose. God's mercy is not only a river that washes away the dirt of sin, it is also the current that carries you into your divine assignment. The same mercy that erased the curse now propels you into the covenant. Mercy, when fully received, transforms the identity of the believer. It shifts you from being a survivor of grace to a steward of grace. You no longer live as someone constantly seeking deliverance. You begin to walk as one who delivers others. This is the final expression of mercy's overflow, when the forgiven become forgivers, when the restored become restorers, when the once cursed become carriers of blessing. God's mercy is not content to heal you halfway. It desires to display through your life the abundance of heaven. The psalm closes with a symphony of creation rejoicing. The pastures of the wilderness overflow. The hills gird themselves with joy. The valleys shout for joy and sing. Every element of nature becomes an instrument of praise because mercy has touched the earth. This imagery teaches us something profound. When mercy visits a soul, the entire environment changes. It is not only the person who is transformed, but also everything connected to them. Relationships begin to heal. Work begins to prosper. The atmosphere of your life shifts from striving to singing. The wilderness of your past starts to bloom again. This is the unstoppable nature of divine mercy. Once it begins, it does not retreat. It expands, it deepens, it multiplies. The mercy that forgave you yesterday is still working today to open doors you never imagined. It follows you into every season, ensuring that nothing in your life remains under the shadow of the curse. Mercy is not seasonal, it is eternal. It is the unending evidence of God's covenant love. To understand this final dimension of mercy, you must see it as a cycle, not a moment. The cycle begins with cleansing. You come before God with all your brokenness, and mercy washes you clean. Then comes healing. Mercy restores what sin damaged. Next comes restoration. Mercy reclaims what was stolen. Then comes commissioning. Mercy entrusts you with purpose. And finally comes overflow. Mercy uses you to extend itself to others. That is why the psalm ends not with silence but with singing. When mercy finishes its work, joy is inevitable. But this joy is not naive optimism. It is the mature joy that comes from having seen both darkness and light, loss and restoration, guilt and grace. The one who has truly experienced mercy does not boast in their strength. They testify of his faithfulness. They know that everything they are is the result of a love that refused to give up on them. Mercy is also God's method of breaking the pride of the flesh. Without mercy, even our righteousness would become arrogance. But mercy reminds us that every good thing we have is borrowed from grace. It keeps us humble, soft, and dependent. It keeps us near to God's heart. David said, "Blessed is the one you choose and bring near." Nearness is the ultimate reward of mercy. It is not merely the absence of judgment, it is the presence of intimacy. The enemy tries to replace intimacy with performance. He whispers that you must earn what has already been given. But mercy silences that lie. It tells you that you are loved not because of what you do, but because of who He is. Mercy is the language of God's heart. And when you learn to hear it, every accusation loses its meaning. You begin to live from a place of rest instead of striving. You stop fearing failure because you understand that mercy will always meet you there. The true test of having received mercy is transformation. Mercy that is understood only as pardon is incomplete. But mercy that transforms becomes visible. It changes how you treat others, how you speak, how you give, how you live. The one who has walked through the flood of divine compassion cannot return to bitterness or pride. They become a river themselves, a channel of mercy to those still trapped in guilt. This is the hidden strength of the church. It is a community of the forgiven. Every believer is a living testimony that mercy still works. The church exists not to display perfection, but to display grace. That is why Jesus said, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy." The flow never stops. It returns to the source, refilling and refreshing everyone it touches. When you live under mercy's overflow, even your weaknesses become testimonies. Paul wrote that God's power is made perfect in weakness. That means mercy turns your most fragile areas into evidence of divine strength. Your story becomes the stage on which grace performs its greatest miracles. You do not need to hide your past. You only need to let mercy rewrite it. Psalm 65 teaches that mercy is not a quiet force. It is fruitful. You visit the earth and water it. You greatly enrich it. This verse reveals the generative power of compassion. Wherever mercy visits, life follows. That is why your life, once touched by mercy, begins to produce fruit you could never have produced alone. Creativity awakens, love deepens, and peace grows. Mercy restores not only what you lost, but also what you never knew you could have. There is also a prophetic dimension to mercy. It does not only react to sin, it anticipates redemption. Before you fell, mercy had already prepared a way back. Before the curse began, the cure existed. This means mercy is always ahead of darkness. The enemy plans destruction, but mercy plans restoration before the plan begins. That is why the psalmist could write, "To you, silence is praise in Zion." Sometimes the greatest worship is not words, but the quiet recognition that mercy has already done the impossible. When you truly grasp the magnitude of mercy, you stop living in fear of tomorrow. You understand that the same mercy that met you in your failure will meet you in your future. You no longer view challenges as punishments, but as opportunities for God to reveal himself again. Mercy turns every obstacle into an altar. Every disappointment becomes a meeting place with divine love. This awareness changes how you pray. Instead of begging for mercy, you begin to partner with it. You pray from victory, not for victory. You stop asking God to love you more and begin thanking him for love that never ceases. You begin to see life through the lens of compassion rather than condemnation. Even when you stumble, you rise quickly because mercy lifts you faster than guilt can pull you down. Mercy also transforms your mission. Once you realize how deeply God has forgiven and restored you, you become compelled to extend that same grace to others. You stop measuring people by their mistakes and begin seeing them through the eyes of potential. You begin to pray differently for your enemies, for your nation, for your family. You begin to believe that no one is too far gone because you remember how far mercy traveled to find you. That is why mercy is the most powerful evangelism tool in the world. It does not argue, it reveals. It does not condemn, it invites. The light of mercy draws hearts in ways that doctrine alone cannot. When people encounter someone who has truly been transformed by compassion, they encounter God himself. Because mercy is his signature, it is how he marks those who belong to him. Living in mercy also redefines how you handle suffering. You no longer see pain as punishment, but as participation in redemption. The same mercy that comforts you in affliction uses that affliction to comfort others. Every trial becomes a message of hope for someone still trapped in despair. The comfort you receive becomes the comfort you give. Thus, mercy turns pain into ministry. It is important to recognize that mercy's overflow is not limited by circumstance. Even when life feels barren, the river still flows beneath the surface. The psalm says, "You make it soft with showers." The soil may look dry, but heaven is already releasing rain. God's mercy often works underground before it becomes visible. You may not see the results yet, but something is germinating in the hidden places of your life. Mercy also ensures that your destiny cannot be stolen. The same force that broke curses and restored inheritance now guards your calling. The psalmist's imagery of hills rejoicing and valleys singing symbolizes this divine protection. It means that every dimension of creation now cooperates with your purpose. When mercy governs your life, even the storms become servants. Every opposition becomes part of the orchestration. This is the secret of peace. The person who lives under mercy no longer fights for control. They understand that the one who forgave them also governs them. They trust his timing, his pruning, his reign, and his silence. They live surrendered because they know mercy is always at work, even when it seems invisible. Mercy's overflow also produces holiness, not the holiness of fear, but the holiness of love. When you are captivated by mercy, sin loses its appeal. You no longer avoid sin out of terror, but out of gratitude. The desire to please God becomes natural because your heart is full. Holiness becomes the fragrance of gratitude, not the burden of obligation. And then comes the final fruit of mercy, worship. The psalmist ends with a vision of the earth singing, rivers clapping their hands, valleys shouting for joy. Worship is the inevitable result of mercy realized. When you understand how deeply you have been loved, you cannot remain silent. Every breath becomes thanksgiving. Every step becomes praise. Worship is not something you do, it becomes who you are. At this stage, mercy has fully matured in your life. It has cleansed, healed, restored, and now transformed you into a living vessel of divine joy. You carry peace that cannot be stolen, faith that cannot be shaken, and love that cannot run dry. Your life itself becomes a psalm, a testimony that the mercy of God truly endures forever. So wherever you are, remember this: mercy did not find you to leave you where you were. It found you to lift you, to use you, to overflow through you. The curse that once followed your name has been erased, and in its place a new story is being written. The signature on that story is not your failure, it is His mercy. Let this be your declaration. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Let every shadow of fear bow to that truth. You are not being followed by darkness. You are being followed by divine favor. Every step you take leaves a trail of grace behind you. The world will know you not by what you lost, but by what mercy has made you. This is the song of Psalm 65, the song of overflowing compassion, of restoration, of divine renewal. It began with cleansing and ends with calling. It began with tears and ends with triumph. It began with a curse trying to follow your name and ends with mercy overtaking it completely. That is the power of God's love, unceasing, unearned, unstoppable. May this truth remain written on your heart. Mercy is the final word. No curse, no accusation, no sin, no power of darkness has authority over the name that mercy has redeemed. You are chosen, cleansed, restored, and commissioned. And now, you are the voice of mercy for others. If this message has strengthened your faith and reminded you of the boundless mercy of God, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Join this growing community where every word, every reflection, and every psalm reveals the living truth that mercy never fails and grace still reigns.